All right. Well, I want to apologize for spring break being at a close. I want to thank you for making it through this Made series that we've been doing. And I want to start off by sharing one of the dumbest things I've ever done. You want to hear about it? Yeah, you do. Okay, so one of the traditions in our family is that my father's side of the family is really into cards. I don't know if you have anybody in your family that, like, whenever there's an event, they send cards, they give cards. Cards are a big deal. So my father's side of the family, it was a big deal. Well, it was expected until you became an adult on your own that you would hand make the cards in our family. And so I was told that I had to do that as I was reconnecting with my birth father when I was in 8th, 9th grade. That was what I was supposed to do. And so I decided that I was going to make a card that was similar to one I'd seen in a store. Now, sometimes it's a good idea to be inspired by something you see in a store, and sometimes it's not. And so this is what I did with the card I made for my birth father that I gave him for his birthday when I was in 9th grade. How many 9th graders we have in the house? We have any 9th graders? Okay. Okay, yeah, freshmen, way to be loud and proud. Some of the dumbest things I ever said or did as a freshman, so welcome to the club. I hope that you have a fun journey. So when I was a freshman, this was my birthday card to my father. I wrote the word sex in really huge letters on the front of his birthday card. And so then I open it up and he goes, "Now that I have your attention, I wanted to wish you happy birthday." Amazing. I give it to my father. That's really messed up. My father thought it was really funny because he was really edgy and he didn't know what else to do, so he laughed and gave me one of those really big dad claps on the back that kind of knocks the wind out of you. My stepmom, however, did not laugh. My stepmother was not as amused. But what it was is I had seen it and I saw someone else laugh when they saw it because there was this truth involved. When you see the word sex on something, it draws attention to it. It just does. I recall, like, if you wait at a checkout line, you see the different magazines on a checkout rack, and the word sex will immediately track your eyes and your mind and your brain. It's just how we work. Sexual images are the same way. In our culture, we know that sex sells. We know that sex is sold as a status symbol. We know that sex is pushed as a reason to buy something. We know that sex is set up as a goal or a purpose. See, that's one of the things that I don't like, because you are one of the premier groups that is aimed at to try to get money from you. Because not only do you have money in your pockets, but you are one of the biggest shapers, manipulators, and pathways of coin in our world. And so people are trying to get money out of your hands. So they try to get you to spend your money that way. It's through images, it's through words, it's through pushes and pulls and nudges and nods to try to get behavior out of you. And in our culture, as it's been for a long time, sex sells. It's sold as a status symbol. It's tried to be put up as a goal. It's tried to be put as something that you need to have something, buy something, own something, wear something, look a certain way, or be a certain person in order to be sexy, sexual, or sexually attractive. And that plays on our insecurities, it plays on our image, and it plays on a lot of who we see ourselves to be. Or, as sociologists used to say, our looking glass self, how we hope people will see us. And it's a big deal. There's some myths about sex. And I'm just kind of jumping in the deep end of the pool because this is our last week together. And here's what I want. I want you to know that you are so much more than the body you carry around and the messages that advertisers try to get you to believe about who you are. And I can't tell you how much I want that for you, because you are going to be tempted to make a lot of bad choices if you start to look at yourself as just the body you pack around or the words that advertisers want you to believe about you. And I so don't want that to be what you buy into. So here's some of the myths. As I was praying for you and for our time together tonight, these are some of the myths I felt like we needed to just point out and call them myths. Myths meaning something that people say and are tempted to believe because it explains something, but are not true. So here's some of the myths. Well, we'll stay together if we have sex, which I'm telling you is never the case. Sex is never a reason to stay together. However, just like you heard Sarah say last week, if you have a sexual relationship with someone and you break up, because of how the hormones work in your body, it makes a breakup that much more vicious if you have emotionally, physically, and mentally attached yourself to another human. It makes it that much harder to break up. If we're together, we're supposed to have sex. In our culture now, if a couple has been together for so long, there are some people who make assumptions about the kind of relationship that you have between each other. That's a myth. It's not always true. If we're together, we're supposed to have sex. Part of being older is I'm supposed to have sex. It's not necessarily true. In fact, actually, did you know that my generation actually kind of led the charge? Millennials are less sexually active, and your generation is even less sexually active than the previous 3 generations before you. I don't know if you knew that, but it's true. Part of being older is I'm supposed to have sex. Something is wrong with me if I'm not having sex. Also not true. Also not true. In fact, actually, one of the healthiest things you might be able to do with yourself is to have good boundaries that set yourself up for the right things to look forward to and the right ways to connect with people. A couple more. Anything short of quote unquote real sex is okay. Well, sexual behavior is sexual behavior. Anytime you do anything that complicates the emotionality and the hormones and the mix and swirl of connection can only make it more confusing and not necessarily as helpful. Sex is for marriage only, and it will be perfect. Okay, and some of you are saying, oh my gosh, why would Pastor Colby have that up there? That is kind of weird that you would have up there. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell my mom and dad. Now, I'm not telling you that sex shouldn't be in marriage. I do believe that, and the Bible backs me up on it. But what I am telling you is that it won't be perfect. See, this is the problem that we have, is sometimes we create images of things based on movies that we watch, TV shows that we watch, stories that we read, books that we've had, or other stories we've heard from other people that have filtered it through their own, what they want you to know and what they don't want you to know. And what happens is we start to create expectations based on fictional stories that we've been handed. And the reality is it's not perfect. It's not perfect in marriage. It's not perfect out of marriage. Wish I could tell you it was. I will tell you that when a magazine did a survey on people with the most satisfied sex lives, the people that they found were people of faith who'd been in a marriage relationship for more than 5 years. Those were the people that had the most satisfying sex lives. Here's one that I thought was interesting to say, is that sex is the reason good people get married. That's another myth, especially in like faith circles, church circles, is that that's one of the reasons that is the reason people get married. No, it is not the reason, but I will say it is a phenomenal benefit of getting married if you're a person of faith. Here's the reason that I share all this with you, is because all of us fall into some kind of a thinking of some of these myths. Now, I've gotten to do something kind of interesting. As I got to go to the Mission Arlington trip last week, and that was a lot of fun. Super proud of the team that went there. Had a lot of fun with them, just having a chance to just play and talk and hang out and help people. It was absolutely amazing. If you've never been on a trip like that before, I can't more highly encourage you to go on one. So I got a chance to just kind of bump elbows and talk to people. Got to sit in on a couple of small groups recently, and that's been really fun and really cool. And I really, really enjoy just learning from people. And this was something that's kind of interesting that I was able to find out. I was able to find out that as much as I feel lost or confused and wondering whether or not the same things are true when I was a teenager as they are now, I'm finding the more things change, the more they stay the same. How many of you have heard that expression before? Anybody heard that before? Oh, 3 of us, cool. All right. So it's a common expression. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And so this is what I found. I found that a lot of people felt pressure to chase sex to feel better about themselves. I found a lot of people felt pressure to be sexually involved with someone because of both the hormones inside them and the climate going on around them. I found that in certain pockets, sex is very common, and in other parts, it's not. I found that different people have mixed views about how they see people that are sexually active. As much as things change, the more they stay the same. This is what I do know. I know that when you have a primary relationship in your life, depending on what boundaries you draw, that first big relationship may or may not create the boundaries that you will impose on future relationships. I heard a family psychologist put it this way: with your dating life, you are either practicing for marriage or practicing for divorce. Isn't that an interesting line? I don't know for sure how I feel about it. I just think it's interesting and it gets me thinking. So I'm wondering if my dating life, looking back, did it help prepare me to be a really rad husband, or did it help create in me a really crappy husband? If I was a really bad boyfriend, did it instill things in me that made me a really bad husband? I don't know. I think it depends on the boundaries that I drew and the decisions that I made. My first really major relationship I had was as a sophomore in high school. I was a late bloomer, y'all, but look at me now. So my first real relationship was a sophomore in high school. And it was a girl named Melissa who was a couple years older than me. I met her in band. How many band kids we have in the house? You got any band kids? All right, band kids. Awesome. So I was a band kid. I met Melissa. Melissa was really sweet and a little older than me, and the more I got to know her, had a really, really bumpy past. Melissa was walking down the street and was hit on by a guy who was in his 30s when she was in middle school, and started a relationship with him. There was something in her broken past that attracted her to older guys, and she became very sexual at a very young age. And the problem with that, with being a guy who hadn't been given a lot of boundaries or instruction or ideas about how these things work, because at the time I was being raised in a home where we showed up at church 2 times a year, Christmas and Easter, or if someone died. That's what time we showed up at church. And be really honest with you, we didn't talk about a lot of things. They just assumed I was a good kid because I got good grades. And they didn't talk about a lot of other things. My stepdad thought it was really rad. She had a Jeep. She would come and pick me up because she drove before me. He thought that was really cool. And we started having a pretty physical relationship. And the problem with that is it set my expectations of what relationships were supposed to be like. But now looking backward, I realize it came from a really broken place, because there were times that she really would open up with me. And sometimes very broken people do very broken things because someone broke part of them and they need to get healing. And that's what happened with Melissa. As things started to come out, she had such a rough childhood. She was molested when she was a little girl. She was brought into a courtroom and had to sit on a stand and pick her mom over her dad when she was 12 years old. She had to deal with, for whatever reason, there were all these older guys that kept having interest in her. The guy she was actually dating right before she dated me was a guy in his late 20s. She was 17. That's really icky. And she is the one that helped me create what my boundaries were for relationships. And looking back, man, I wish someone had pulled me aside. I wish someone would have told me that, you can actually be part of helping someone if you have boundaries and you have an idea about what it means to be in a relationship and what it means to be in a sexual relationship and what it means to honor someone else and what it means to bring out the best in someone. I wish someone had pulled me aside and told me some of those things. I wish this me could go back and talk to that me, because it is such a terrible thing knowing that I was part of her story getting worse instead of better. Because this is something that God's put big on my heart. You were made for more than sex. Sex was made for you with true commitment and real love. See, that's the thing. See, some things were made for you. You weren't made for them. There is only one point in this entire universe that you were made for. You were made for God. And then when you find the one He has for you, God has made you for each other to bring out the best in each other. Outside of that, everything else that we get to experience was actually made for us. We weren't made for it, which is a crazy thought if you think about it. But what happens is we get the sequences wrong because we start to create different things as goals, like I did with Melissa. See, the best thing that a good relationship needs is time. That's the best thing that any great relationship needs. That's what the best relationships have, is time. Every great relationship has that because there's a progression that happens. You know, first you have the classic notice, right? Where there's like just something different about them in the room. You're like, hey girl. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something different about them. I clearly remember where I was, how I felt, what feelings were going through me from the tips of my toes to my nose and hair tips of what was going on in me when I saw my future wife walk across the room. There was something different in me. I noticed her. And not just that I was physically attracted to her. I noticed her as a human. It was big, it was different. And that's what we have to do. First, we notice someone. Once we notice them, we have common experiences together. If you actually don't build common experiences with someone, you're not actually getting to know them as a real human. At that point, they're just a product or an image until you have common experiences with them. Common experiences is huge. Common experiences is how you build relationship. Common experiences is how you see their humanity, their strengths, their weaknesses, and you grow with them. You realize how they can get better and how they can make you better. Common experiences are huge, which again is why if you want to be part of PTSM, it's why I encourage you to do things like come with us to big stuff, go on a serve trip, because like there's a lot of you in here that's actually how I personally have gotten to know you, is I've gotten to go on a trip of some kind with you. When I've gone on a trip with you, everything's changed, because now we're not just first names and we're not just people that kind of see each other and recognize each other. We have relationship with one another because we have common experiences together. If you want to be a great boyfriend or girlfriend, you want to have a great future with somebody, you don't build common experiences with them, that becomes pretty close to impossible. It's a big, big deal. Next is you have a built friendship. Now we have to talk about this for a moment because this is different. We live in a culture where we have followers and friends through social media, but we don't take them, we just click a button to include them in a list. When you build a friendship, that means it actually takes something from you or from me where we build something into one another. We spend time with one another. We do something with intentionality to do something together to build a relationship that's stronger and better than average. You build it together. You have to try. The same way that if you want to have great academics, or you want to have a great athletic career, or you want to be a fantastic performer, you build into it. Whether you're a swimmer, a gymnast, a cheerleader, whether you're in band, whether you're in football or soccer or softball or baseball or golf, whatever it is, you have to build yourself into it to be your best. You have to. And friendships are the same way. And we don't talk about that anymore. And honestly, we should, because you are the loneliest generation our planet has ever seen. And one of the reasons why is because I don't think that we take the time to really build friendships. Next, and this is when it starts getting real, we start to have exclusive relationships. This is what I mean by exclusive relationships. I mean that there's times that there's certain boundaries that I have, there's conversations I have that are different than ones I have with just everybody else. By the way, this is a phenomenal habit to get into to prepare yourself to be a phenomenal husband or wife one day. Because to be a phenomenal husband or wife, it means that you honor that other person with the respect to allow them to be the only voice or the only ear about certain topics in your life. People that I know that get in trouble with their marriages is when they start talking to coworkers like their spouses. They start sharing stories, problems, struggles with a coworker or with someone through the internet or from an old friend from high school through Facebook. Not that any of you use Facebook, but the older people do. But that's what starts to happen. See, when you want to start having an exclusive relationship with someone, you start giving the exclusive honor and respect to who that person is, which leads me to my next one. And that's you have intentional respect. This is huge. If you want to really, really, really have someone's heart, you have to have their respect. That means you have to respect their boundaries. That means you have to respect their heart. That means you have to respect their mind. That means you have to respect them 360 degrees, inside and out and all around. Not just what you see when they face you and walk towards you or touch you. And that's where things fall apart. Intentional respect means you want that person to be their best. You want to respect their boundaries, and you want to bring out the very best in them, and it's intentional. I want to tell you flat out, as someone who really loves you and prays for you regularly, if the people you allow closest in your life do not intentionally respect you, they don't deserve you. That's really good. I'm going to stop there for a moment. But do you hear that? If you can't have someone who intentionally respects you, they don't deserve the honor of being in your inner circle. Whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, they don't deserve that honor. And I mean that. So I was gone a couple weeks ago. I got to go to Disney. I've been leaking Disney photos for those of you that creep on my social media accounts. Some of you might have noticed that. And it was awesome. My wife has this thing where I'm not allowed to show pictures of where I actually am when I'm out of town. I have to wait until we come back into town. And so I've been like leaking them out. And it was so much fun, y'all. It was great. We were there before all the touristas and spring breakers came, and we did not have to wait in a whole bunch of lines, and it was the best. I will be completely honest. One of the other reasons that we went is we also got to go to a wedding. I actually got to be part of the wedding ceremony for a couple that is just awesome. Their names are Tony and Sarah. Tony is 30 years old. I've known Tony for a long time. He married this girl, and I want to let you know that love stories can still exist. So this is what happened with Tony. Do we have a picture of Tony and Sarah? I thought we had a picture. There they are. That's a wrong picture of Sarah. Not that Sarah. This Sarah. That's a wrong picture behind. The one in the middle, not the one on the side. That's Tony and Sarah. I want you to look at the way he's looking at her. Do you see the way he's looking at her? Isn't that the cutest thing you've ever seen? Now here's the thing you gotta know. Tony is one of these like mountainy, masculine, man of few words, like pretty stoic, like I wouldn't play poker with him, okay? To see him look at another human like this is outstanding, because I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at Sarah. When he got up there and everyone, and when I spoke and the other guy that was part of the ceremony and he spoke, we said the same things. We've never seen a couple like this before. See, Tony was the oldest brother in a family of 5. 4 girls, 4 sisters, only brother. Respect. The thing that's awesome about Tony has a huge heart for other people. Tony has gone on more mission trips than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. He's been to Africa, he's been to Mexico. He's been to Mexico so many times, I don't think he's kept count. He met his future wife ministering to the city dump kids in Tijuana, Mexico. He knew she was the one when he saw her making sandwiches to hand out to kids for their only meal of the day. It was the worst job on the trip. It was hot, it was uncomfortable, and everyone else was getting to do kind of fun, cool jobs, and she was making sandwiches. And that's what connecting them. To let you know, they had actually met each other multiple other times, but he didn't remember. She was the videographer at his sister's wedding.
Oh my God.
They went to bonfires together, that they had mutual friends. But they never directly interacted with one another. But at that moment in Tijuana, that is what it changed. I've never seen him look at a woman like that before. You wanna know why? He never had. There was something he was holding back in his heart that was different about any other human. And when he got up there and he kissed her, and I'm gonna really do a mic drop moment on you now. We were able to say, for your very first kiss, please kiss your bride.
Stop.
Now, I want you to really hear what I said there. I didn't say for their first kiss, for his first kiss. He had walked such a line of integrity. He had prayed for his future wife every day, which, by the way, is some of the best advice I've ever been given. When I decided to get real with Jesus and decided to save my best for my future wife, somebody had given me the advice to start praying for my future wife, so I did. Some of the best advice I was ever given. There were times I was lonely, frustrated, was watching my friends play the dating game left and right, making bad choices, and sometimes you will if you're too quick to date anybody and everybody who thinks you're cute and they're cute. But I just was I had to share that about Tony. It was just so cool. Endeavor to have a love story, not a series of lust moments. When you do, you will have someone look at you like that, because that's what I want for you. Go with me if you will. I'm gonna go a little late tonight. I just wanna give you a heads up. Genesis 29, if you would. Genesis 29 is one of the first real big love stories. In Genesis 29, we read about a man named Jacob. Jacob is about to meet the woman of his dreams, and he's about to marry her. So he thinks. In Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, 29 verse 18, we read, since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife. Now let's understand a couple of things here. Number one thing we gotta understand here is that back in the day, that's just kind of how it worked. Dad of the bride had all the power, and that's just kind of how it was, okay? So that might seem a little weird and goofy, because it is, but back in the day, that's just how they rolled. How long did he say he would work for the privilege of getting to marry her?
7 years.
7 years! Can we talk about that for a minute? 7 years ago, you were rocking out to Call Me Maybe. 7 years ago, you were playing with Monster High, Beyblades, and Legos. 7 years ago, you were playing Lego games and Just Dance on your Wii. 7 years ago, you were rocking iCarly and Victorious. 7 years ago, 7 years ago, 7 years ago. Now let's think 7 years ahead. 7 years ahead. This gets crazy. Virtually everyone in this room will be done with college and starting their career. 7 years from now, by the percentages, about a third of this room sitting in these rows will be married. 7 years. 7 years. That's big. He is willing to work 7 years. Let's read what happens next. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Aww. But something wonky happens. This is where it starts to sound like a Sandra Bullock movie. This is where it starts. It's the cute love story that always has a whoop right in the middle of it, right? This is what happens next. Because you gotta have some dysfunction or it wouldn't be entertaining, right? That's what always reminds me that this stuff isn't made up, because there's such weird stuff in it. Nobody in their right mind would make this crap up, okay? So verse 25, but when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. Oh, hold on. Wait, what was the name of the girl he married again that worked 7 years for? What was her name again? Rachel, okay. Jacob's words, what have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. That's such great language. He raged at him. That's such good language. I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? And then here's dad, all being cool about it. Well, it's not our custom to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn. Whoa, 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 whoa. You couldn't have told me that before our 7-year agreement. Apparently not. Apparently he thought something else. But wait until the bridal week is over, and then I'll give you Rachel, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me. 14 years. Verse 28. So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. Let's stop here for a second. When your goal is relationship and when your goal is love story, you have no problem putting priority on TIME, because TIME is what creates the best STORY. The very, very best. And that's what happens here. Because here's where it goes south. When sex becomes a goal, people become a way of getting you there rather than the center of there. When sex becomes a focus, lust replaces love and self-respect. At this point, I've been around longer than I want to admit, and the people that have struggled with lust most are the people who have the least amount of self-respect. When sex becomes a purpose, relationships become distant or shallow. And here's what I mean by that. Not only the relationships with the people on the other end of the lust, but I'm telling you, people that give in to shallow relationships push away their deep relationships. They push away the people that care about them most. They push away the people that want what's most for them. They push away the people that want what's best for them, because it makes people feel guilty when they're around people like that. In 1 Thessalonians 4, there's a phenomenal passage about God's heart for us in a righteous view of sex. God's will is for you to be holy, so stay away from all sexual sin. Then each of you will control his own body or her own body and live in holiness and honor, not in lustful passion like the pagans who do not know God and his ways. Never harm or cheat a fellow believer in this matter by violating his wife, for the Lord avenges all such sins. Ooh, that sounds scary. As we have solemnly warned you before, God has called you to live holy lives, not impure lives. Therefore, anyone who refuses to live by these rules is not disobeying human teaching, but is rejecting God, who gives the Holy Spirit to you. If I were to sum that up, it's like this. Sex was never meant to give you value. It was meant to be valued with the person meant to value you most. That's the purpose of it. Sex was never meant to give you value. It was meant to be valued with the person meant to value you most. And your value will come from your perspective about what you think gives you value. Your value will center your perspective. Your God, whether it's a little g God or a big G God, will track your perspective. And your choices will solidify that perspective in your life. I'm gonna close out here, and I wanna close it out with this idea. Some of you are going to be learning how to drive, or you are learning how to drive. And based on how it is when I go into a high school parking lot area in here, I'm gonna guess that most people driving are learning how to drive. But when you're learning how to drive, freshmen, sophomores, I'm gonna give you a huge life hack. When it comes to driving, it's not enough for you to just pay attention to what's right in front of you. You need to be aware of what's going on inside your car, what's going on with your gauges, your speed, what's going on with your car itself. You need to be aware of the distractions inside your car. You need to be aware of what's going on with the cars that are not only right in front of you and right in back of you, but the cars that are to the sides of you, and the cars that are even further down the road. Drivers, how many of you have learned the hard way that you have to keep your attention both right in front of you and also 3 or 4 cars in front of you? How many of you learned the hard way that yet? Yeah, I remember having to learn that the hard way too. Your sex life and your view and perspective of sex is the same way. You need to not only be aware of the right here and now, you need to also be aware of the steps around you and what's coming up on the road several cars ahead. Because the decisions you make in your relationships right now don't just affect right now. They affect moments ahead down the road. The habits, the boundaries you create and carry with you will harm or help who and what comes next. Because at some point, you are going to meet someone who's going to be the someone. And you're going to have hard conversations with them. And you're going to have conversations that I want you to be proud of and not ashamed of, that help and don't hurt. Hebrews 13:4 in the Message put it this way: honor marriage and guard the sacredness of sexual intimacy between wife and husband. God draws a firm line against casual and illicit sex. Basically, if I were to paraphrase, I'd put it this way: your behavior will respect marriage, the marriage you're going to probably have one day, the idea of marriage in your head and heart, and where you go next. Here's my life hacks for you. Keep sex in perspective with your internal conversations. How do you think about things of a sexual nature? What are the things you allow yourself to think about? Images you allow your eyes to hang on to? when you're scrolling through things, your internal conversations about yourself, your body, someone else and their body. What kind of perspective do you keep in your internal conversations? Just you, inside your head. Keep sex in perspective with your close conversations. This is one that I wish someone had really pulled me aside differently with. Because the way you talk about these kinds of things with your close friends will either help you make wise choices or help you make unwise choices. How do you talk about this kind of stuff with your close friends? Does it help or does it hurt? Are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? Keep sex in perspective with your prayer conversations. That's just being honest and real. God cares about every single part of your life. And I know it sounds really strange, but I would encourage you, if you have frustrations, fears, if you have questions, pray. Take it to him. Invite him into those conversations. You were made for more than sex. Sex was made for you to draw you closer to the right person and not make you feel better about yourself with just any person. That's my prayer for you. Thanks for being such good sports about such a funky series. I'm proud of you and I love being your pastor. You guys are gonna have great small groups tonight as we close out this series. I would encourage you to be open about where you are. I want to encourage you to ask questions about how to have good boundaries, about what are realistic expectations, what are good boundaries, and if you want to be your best, what does that look like? Your small group leader wants to help you as best they can. And if they don't have a good answer, they're gonna help get a good answer. Let me pray for us. Lord, thank you so much that you care for us in all these areas, that you don't leave us abandoned or on our own, that you made us far more than for the body that we carry around with us or the images or products that the world tries to sell us. I pray, God, that each person here would have a perspective of their own sexuality that would honor you and would honor the divine spark you put in each of us, that we would not let go or let up on being the person you're calling us to be, that we would remember that each of us is made for so much more than a moment, a relationship, or a sensation with another human. Lord, I thank you so much that you care for us and you care enough to talk to us about the things that matter and the things that we struggle with. And I pray that if there's anyone here that is struggling with any of this stuff or feels any kind of shame or frustration, Lord, would you just remind them that they are accepted by you, that they are loved by you, and help them to find someone to walk with them and that they would know that they're not being looked down on. Lord, I pray for those that are trying to make wise choices, but it's really difficult. I pray that you would help them to find allies that would pray for them and support them and encourage them. I pray for those that are looking to come out of a hurtful relationship or an awkward relationship. Lord, would you help that person to have courage to just keep taking a new step forward each day? Lord, we thank you that we were made for so much more than these things. And we pray that you would continue to remind us of that. In your name, amen.